All right, let's go ahead and get started. This is the education experience. This is me doing it for school. This is me giving a platform to all the educators that I've, met out there throughout my days who are out there serving their respective communities. And I wanted to give them a chance to let them know what type of service that they're providing and whatnot. And some of the educators that I've met throughout the course of my education experience are basketball coaches, athletic coaches. I am here today with the Piedmont High School basketball staff. We got head coach Benjamin Spencer. We got coach Shamari Worley and coach Harris. Gentlemen, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it. I wanted to start off with some breaking news that we had last night. The Los Angeles Lakers traded Anthony Davis and a couple of other people in a 2029 first round draft pick. Sounds quite irrelevant for superstar on the Dallas Mavericks, Luka Doncic. We have one Laker fan in here, so I'll go ahead and just ask you, Coach Worley, how you feel about that?
At first, I didn't believe it, man. I thought it was a fake news. I was calling around, checking around, flipping through channels on TV, looking at my phone, and sure enough, ESPN, breaking news on the bottom of the ticker, man. Luka to the Lakers. I mean, I'm good with it because it helps us out for the future. AD wasn't my fan favorite would you say, but I'm good with it, man. I don't care. I mean, LeBron's on his way out after probably one more year anyway, and we needed somebody to take over the tradition and realm after he's gone anyway to put seats in the butts in the seats and have people keep coming out to Laker games. So getting Luka is great.
Coach Spencer, where were you when you heard the news?
I was on my couch falling asleep with a 3-year-old at home. It makes it kind of rough when you get it that late. Yeah, no, I was on the couch. I was watching actually the same area's Gonzaga game when it came through. I saw it on Twitter during halftime. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. I think it's a good fit for Dallas. I don't know. I'm not a fan of the Lakers, so yeah, just seeing the Lakers now have Luka and LeBron. I don't know what they're gonna do. They seem really small now. And Luka doesn't play much defense. LeBron's getting older. I don't know if it's a good fit for them. But yeah, it was pretty wild to see. I was saying the reactions of the actual NBA guys, though, seeing the trade like in live time on the benches was more entertaining and exciting for me. Just to check that out. But yeah, it's a big thing. I know today I was reading an article about how a lot of the superstars now are all freaking out because it was like one of those untouchable guys who was like, Dallas is never going to get rid of him. But to see this happen, it set precedent. Like, okay, if we don't like something about a certain player, their defense or their off-season workout, it's like we'll trade you and try to get some asset or commodity from you. So I know a lot of the big time guys were chirping about it a little bit. It sounds like, but yeah, it was a shocking thing to see for sure.
Coach Harris, with that being said, does it mean that anyone is tradable or I guess expendable? Because I think you're a Celtics fan, right? So does that mean?
I was just as a Celtics fan, I'll bring it up. Like everything's always rigged in favor of the Lakers. Like this was obviously like put in by the commissioner, to make sure Luka got to LA because somehow they only got one pick and like Rudy Gobert fetches 4 or 5 number ones and everybody gives you 3, 4 number ones for any good player. And Luka, you only get AD and Max Christie and 1 number 1 in 2029. That's a terrible trade for the Mavericks, in my opinion. Like they might, unless they know Luka's hurt or something. I heard they don't want to pay him. I guess he's due. He would get a supermax this summer of like $350 million. I read something that maybe he was gonna kind of force his way out if he didn't get it. So it might be more financial than anything else, but it annoys me that the Lakers get Luka for that little. So
how would you feel if it was someone like Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum that got traded for that? Because it seemed like it was just a little. It was. They could have asked for more. So like, what if they had asked for Jason?
Or if they shopped him around? I don't think they would give up Tatum, but I don't. Jaylen Brown's a discussion for sure. I think we talk about it, right? I definitely talk about it. I don't know. It seems like if they shopped him around, they would get a lot from somebody. Like he's a 25-year-old, and he also like I read this other thing that the Mavericks lost 700,000 Instagram followers in 20.
Oh wow,
What's
yeah.
the value on that and the attendance and selling jerseys? And I don't think it was a good business. I don't think it's a good business move. So
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was gonna start with your journey, as coming, varsity basketball coach. But I mean, with that being said, and just knowing that it seems like there was an emotional investment in that player, Luka Doncic, and I'm pretty sure there's emotional investments on, all these players, the Steph Currys, the LeBron James, and whatnot. But Coach Spencer, do you have these emotional ties with your athletes, that you have raised, for, the 4 years that you have them?
Absolutely. I'm kind of privileged and lucky in the sense that I'm also a teacher in the district. And so, it's not just 4 years that I've had the kids on the basketball team or in the program. A lot of them coming up, I've had in my elementary class. So I think 8 of our 11 that I have on the team this year are actually from my elementary school. And so, I have a senior this year who's a Beach alum. Shout out Beach Elementary in Piedmont. He's a senior. He's touring Carlton this weekend and McAllister. And so, yeah, there definitely is an investment just watching the kids grow up. I know it's athletics, but you see these kids come up from, third, fourth, fifth grade for me. They go off to middle school and they get to high school. And so there absolutely is an investment, knowing their parents and their families for, it's close to a decade. They're a lot of emotional ties. And then obviously, with Coach Harris being our assistant for as long as he's been my assistant, his kiddos have come through and, really close with his family and, AJ and Luke. And a couple of years ago, my wife and I had, a pretty traumatic birth experience with our son, Jordan. And AJ, to me is like a son. He definitely, he still checks in, calls me, when he comes home from Emory. It's always nice to catch up with him. So there definitely is an emotional connection that I have with a lot of the kids and their families. So when they obviously finish playing basketball, it's much deeper than that. I still have contact with Luke Barrett, who's playing at St. Mary's, and everybody from his team. We still contact each other and text each other, which is kind of nice. But yeah, there definitely is a deep emotional connection with all these guys. And, when they have successes in the real world or, a tragedy or something happens, you definitely feel it as a coach. So there is a big emotional connection that I have.
Coach Harris, yeah, with that being said, you have 2 sons that have gone through the Piedmont High School basketball program. You've been blessed to be able to coach your boys as well. I want to know, how have you been able to balance your relationship with your sons as a coach and as a father?
That's a good question. Well, Luke, who's the oldest, was probably the hardest. He's a very emotional kid and very competitive. And so I really just told Ben, like, you're going to have to coach Luke. I'm not talking to him during the game. And like, I just stayed away from him, to be honest with you. And when his junior year, when Ben took over, he was a junior and ended up being a championship team and everything. And there were a lot of seniors on that team that were experienced. And so that was the one year I was sort of like a little hands off. Like it was kind of weird for me to yell at a senior with him there. So I felt a little bit like I can't. And I never coached above him, but every grade beneath him, I had coached kids growing up. And AJ's class, I coached those kids in 3rd, 4th grade. So I was fine yelling at all them. I was like, I got no problem with that. And AJ and I have just always been very close. And AJ's kind of like a coach. And so like, that's all he thinks about is strategy and like for him, it was just easier. I don't know. Like we sort of think the same way. And, he's very competitive too, but he's not quite as like fiery as Luke. Like if I yelled something at Luke at a game, I could see him yelling back at me, So luckily we had Ben to sort of run the show, and being the assistant, as you know, being the assistant coach is a great job because when you win, you get some credit. And when you lose, Ben gets all the blame. So, it works out.
Just blame it on the head coach if it doesn't.
Yeah.
Coach Worley, thank you for raising my son in his basketball journey. You know, we go way back, you and I. Please describe to me how I am as a parent out there. Like, how do you keep, you know, a parent like me in check when, you know, you're trying to do your job and as a coach?
I mean, as far as like your experience is like it's pretty normal for like a parent for you. Like, you know, you want to see your kid do good out there. You want to see them, you know, apply the skills or whatever on the court, what they practice. So I know, I mean, knowing you work hard, you want your son to work hard and take things serious and not waste their time in learning their skill or getting better as an individual or as a basketball player. So in that case, you're pretty chill and pretty like a normal parent. Just want to see their kid doing well. And yeah, I mean, your son was pretty easy going, and he listened and he got better at what I was telling him to do. Will help him be successful on the court. So yeah.
Is there any trouble with, you know, I guess difficult parents that, you know, disrupt, you know, what you're trying to do out there though? And how do you keep them in order? How do you keep them in check?
I mean, as far as my experience go, as far as being one of the assistant coaches on varsity, I don't get much heat like Ben does because he's the head coach. But as far as my experiences, like being on the coaching staff for 6 years and like, you know, each season is different. Each kid is different. You know, each kid is some kids are more hungrier than others and wanting to improve their skills. So it's pretty simple. I get a lot of thank yous from parents, like thank you for, you know, helping my son get better at this or better at that. So it's easy on my part, but I don't know what Ben experienced as the head coach. He gets the emails, he gets all the calls. So my experience has been great so far.
I will say, I being a parent and a coach, and like my two sons are both playing, so I'm kind of have the parent experience too, even though it's at the college level. And I went to like AJ's games a couple weeks ago, and before I got there, they were like 13-1, number one in the country. The coach had gotten his 300th career win. Like, everyone loves you. And then we lost 2 games, and like I heard parents grumbling, like, "What are we doing? What's our?" I'm like, "We were number one in the country like yesterday. We lost in overtime." Like, and I'm like, "They're already mad at the coach." I'm like, it's tough, man. Being a coach is really hard. Like, it's pretty thankless. Like, you know, everyone kind of blames you, and then when things are going well, like, you know, but I think Ben would say we've generally had really good parent experiences.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, 100%.
good.
Yeah,
they volunteer their time quite a bit too. They're very invested in the program. They have to drive carpool. Like, we don't have buses, so they put a lot into the program, which I think is a good thing. Like, they kind of have some stake in it a little bit, which is good.
Yeah, no, it's been, you know, as challenging as, you know, Piedmont can be in terms of a district, right? It's really high performing academically. So you can get a lot of parents that are really challenging. And I would say in our 5 or 6 years, we probably maybe had one. I think that was really difficult. For the most part, though, the parents recognize the amount of work that, you know, educators and teachers and coaches are putting in. Obviously, there's going to be some like grievances and grumblings here and there when little Johnny isn't playing a ton of minutes. But for the most part, we've been really lucky. I think a huge piece of it is, you know, Jason lives in District 2, right? He lives in Piedmont, so he already has an amazing relationship with the community itself, right? And so, you know, a lot of parents and families that are there know him and his family. You know, Shamari's been in the district for as long as I have, for 13 years. You know, so, you know, I've been coaching in Piedmont with the high school team. This is my 13th year doing it, but sixth year as varsity. And so just being in the district as a teacher, I have relationships with a lot of the kids and their families. And so, you know, my transparency as being an educator flows into me being a coach. And so, yeah, just being really transparent with parents and protocols and tryouts and, you know, sort of how our culture of Piedmont basketball works. There's no surprises, right? So parents come in and they kind of know what to expect. And I think that is one of the biggest things that I've seen with a lot of programs that aren't as successful is things change depending on which kid comes, right? Whereas we've maintained a pretty consistent culture and routine with how kids move up from freshman to JV to varsity. And so just being transparent with the parents has actually made it pretty easy, I think. We haven't had a lot of difficulty with parents. We also don't get a ton of transfers or things like that where, a kid's worked hard for 3 years and then a really good kid transfers in and starts to play over a kid who's, sort of put the time and effort in. So our kids are great too. That's the other piece that sort of makes it easy is that, there's not a lot of issues that we have to deal with as coaches academically, socially, which can sometimes take away from on court time, and we don't have to deal with that. So it's just one extra thing that, we don't have to talk to parents about as much. Our kids, go home and get all their homework done. GPAs are extremely high. So we're really lucky in that sense. And again, like I said, Jason being in the district, myself, we're able to sort of see what's coming down the pipeline and not be blindsided. I know there's times where Jason has, heard something at a party or a basketball event, and it's like, hey, we got to be, watch out for this kiddo and this family or something like that, where you can sort of put barriers and things up in place, being more proactive, I think, instead of reactive too, is kind of how we run our program.
I did want to ask about that because it seems like the way that well, at least the trend of how youth sports is going is you try to get to them early. You scout them early, middle school level, AAU, all these things. And as far as like recruiting so that your program stands out and you guys can hang banners in a sense. How do you deal with that when you get a parent who might have this standout athlete who's 6'5", 6'6", and is pretty much ready to get scouted from one of those D1 schools?
Man, where are those ones?
Yeah, let us know.
Unfortunately, we haven't had someone like that. Luke Barrett was probably our biggest kid coming out, probably about 6'4", maybe 6'5", athletic, but not very heavy. And, he didn't put on, 20 pounds till he went to St. Mary's with Randy. But yeah, we haven't had a 6'5", 6'6", just, kid who's dunking on people. We've had Britt Burden who, walked in at USC this year, 6'5", maybe 6'4". But yeah, we haven't had one of those kids. So we haven't had to deal with parents like that. A lot of our, success, I think too, as a district is you're talking about, kids coming up through the ranks. And because we're a public school, we don't have the same ability to go out and try to influence kids come Piedmont, like some of the private schools do. And we're not a big public school, so we don't have 4,200 kids to choose from. So I think between Shamari, Jason, and I, that's kind of how I got started in Piedmont, was sort of this grassroots idea of I was coaching a third grade AAU team and then slowly followed those kids up. Jason had his hands on the AAU program that was in Piedmont. And so, we get these kids. And then obviously as we started to work our way into the program, it was one of those sort of things where it's like, whatever we're doing at the high school, we want to start doing for our kids at the middle school level or even younger. Right. And so that way, when they get to high school, they already know kind of the language and sort of sets or sort of, philosophies and culture that we've established. So for us specifically, the grassroots, thing is big for us just because we don't have 4,200 kids to choose from like Berkeley High or 3,900 or 2,900 or whatever. We're in a league where, we're playing big D1s, Castro Valleys of the world, Berkeley Highs, we don't get to pull from those kids. And because of that, we don't get those transfers to come in as well. So we have to do with what's in our district. And sometimes that's, 5'11" Johnny, who's not super athletic, right? So how can we, compete with those athletes that you were describing? They got to be able to have the really good foundational basketball skills. They have to know what our sets are and just get better at it. So yeah, so we don't have that luxury. It would be nice though to add to one of those guys, because I think if they did, we'd be hanging a lot of banners.
Coach Harris, has there been any worry over the years that because, you do have these ties, with the school, you're part of the basketball staff, about there being a conflict of interest? I'm talking about that word nepotism, and just like any special treatment in that way, so that there isn't like this LeBron and Bronny situation, I guess you can call it. How have you been able to handle that?
I think I mean, honestly, like they were both really good, so that helps. When they're averaging 25 a game or whatever they were, people tend to go with it. So both of them, I think it would be harder. It would also be harder if you were the head coach. Like I had one year where I coached AJ on JV with some kids I had coached before, so I kind of had to navigate that one a little bit. But he was the best player on that team too, and I think everyone saw it. So I was like, well, I wouldn't play him if he wasn't the best player, But I tried to avoid that. So I tried not to coach them as much as I could when they were younger. I coached them when they were young, but then I would turn them over. Cameron Quick, who used to coach with us, and he was the head coach at Alameda High. I kind of hired him to coach them in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. So he started coaching a lot of our kids, and it's always good to have different voices. And so I tried to avoid it the most I can, but I think people realized they were good too. So, Piedmont, we're not that deep. So they kind of stood out as good players, I think.
Coach Worley, what got you into coaching?
Ben Spencer. No, I really wanted to coach. So I used to bug Ben years ago, like, hey man, if you get the head coaching job up there, let me know. I'm ready, man. I'll do it. And then all of a sudden he got the head coaching job. He said, you wanna be on board? I said, I'm ready, man. Let's go. So Ben Spencer is why. But I always wanted to coach anyway. I just wanted to find the right opportunity and the right situation to do it. And this is the perfect situation and perfect opportunity for me anyway. So that's why.
To go a little deeper, like, do you feel like you had like a calling to do this, and that's what really just led you towards, yeah, I got to go out there, I got to teach, I got to mentor, I have something to provide?
I mean, growing up playing the game, playing at the highest level you can. Well, not playing pro, but playing college ball and, being a point guard, being a leader growing up, being an older brother, to younger siblings and just being a leader and knowing what I'm talking about is something that I would like to I don't want to keep gems. I don't want to keep stuff held in. I want to share my knowledge of, the game of basketball. And on top of that, of just at one point I wanted to be a teacher like Ben, but I just got sick of the kids at one point and just took a break and was like, you know what? How else can I reach the kids? And being a coach at the high school is another way for me to reach the kids without having to, see a kid all day type thing. So this is the best thing for me.
Are there any coaches or even players out there that have inspired you in your journey as a coach right now?
These coaches that I'm with now, Coach Harris, Coach Spencer, my head coach at De Anza High School, Coach Shaw, my middle school coach, Coach Pally at Claremont. Those coaches really inspire me. I learn a lot from them.
Coach Spencer, you got to play at UConn. You got to play for legendary Coach Calhoun. What was that experience like?
Amazing and also terrifying. I think he's one of the older school coaches. I don't know if he would last as a college coach nowadays with everything. I think, half the teammates that I had probably would have transferred with the NIL stuff nowadays. He got a lot out of his guys. He expected a lot, but man, he was terrifying. But yeah, it was a pretty cool experience to be a walk on there and get both sides right. Like, as the idea of like I could see what the internal program was going to be like and that kind of things, but I didn't have that sort of added pressure of to go out and necessarily perform. I played 12 minutes in 4 years, so do the math on minutes per year. But just seeing the level. And, to Coach Shamari's, point that he was saying earlier is what inspired the coaching. And I don't know if I ever would have gotten to coaching if I hadn't gone to play at UConn as a walk-on. Like, I got originally recruited to play D3s on the East Coast, but kind of passed that up. Wanted to go to a bigger school and sort of just get the college experience. But having walked on at UConn, I really quickly realized, like, I can't continue playing basketball professionally, either, semi-pro or overseas. I just wasn't athletic enough or good enough. But I loved the game of basketball. So the only way for me I saw long-term to stay in it was coaching, right? I wasn't going to be able to continue to play for 20, 30 years competitively just with my athleticism and whatnot. So as I was at UConn, I definitely found myself enjoying being at the end of the bench and sitting next to, the director of basketball operations and our assistant grad students who, wanted to get into coaching, and sort of just, I didn't have to worry about going in the game, but would pick their ear or sit in on meetings that they were having about, what type of offense they were going to run against, what Big East team, how they're going to try to handle. And so that slowly started to work up towards my senior year where, I would sit in on the coaches meetings just as a walk-on, not knowing I wasn't going to play, and just hearing the coaches talk strategy and things like that was just as, if more exciting than being a player. When you're a player, right, you're just going out and you play and you do something that's almost innate. You play. Whereas for coaching, you have to look so many minutes, hours down the line, right? Like, you're not just thinking about, well, I'm going to go right against this guy and see if I can get a layup or a jump shot. Like, you're thinking strategy, first minute to, first offensive set to second quarter, to what happens if it's a close game, what happens if we get in foul trouble. I like the cerebral thinking that came along with it. I feel like when you're a player, it's very much like checkers. It's simple. You know what you can do and you have control over it. I felt like becoming a coach was more like chess, where you actually have to really dive into what the other players are thinking, what your players are thinking. And so I really liked that aspect of coaching while I was at UConn. And so that sort of was where I got into, like, I might want to do the coaching thing. Was from being at UConn, just sitting with unbelievable basketball minds at, the highest level, Division I, so I was pretty fortunate to have that. So even if I could go back and do it again, I think I would choose to play D3. If I could, I would go back because, again, at the end of the day, you want to play, but, it was invaluable to be able to sit and just dissect what coaches were talking about. It was really amazing.
Do you have that conversation, with your athletes over the years, just as far as like, hey, the reality is, we're not all going to be able to play on that elite level. We might not even get to play professionally.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I was in sixth grade. Mrs. Hightower was my Latin teacher, and we had to write a paragraph about what we wanted to do in Latin. And I was awful Latin student, and wrote a paragraph how I wanted to play basketball in the NBA. And she was the first person that was like, yeah, you're not going to play in the NBA. Like, look at you type thing, right? Like, you're barely 6'1", 6'2". And I was like, all right, I'm going to challenge that a little bit. So obviously got to walk on at UConn, but from that aspect, it was one of those, like, kind of eye-opening, like, what are you going to do? So for me, when I went to go play, like, it was like kind of like D1 or bust, right? And then I realized, like, yeah, I'm not going to play D1. So when I really did go look at the D3s, it was kind of like, yeah, I'm going to go get the college experience that I referred to earlier, right? But then obviously, I just loved the game and got back into it. But now when we have our kiddos, like, come through, like Luke Barrett and JoJo Murphy, Britt Burden, AJ and Luke, like, I've always had the conversations and tell them straight up, like, right now, if I could go back and do it again, I would choose to go play D3, right? Because my best memories, even when I think, Coach Harris and Coach Shamari can probably attest to this, is that when I talk to our team and kids, I often refer back to when I played in high school. I don't refer back to when I played at UConn and things like that. They're cool, fun stories and whatnot, running into LeBron James and things like that, which are awesome. But, like, my favorite memories of basketball were playing in high school with my friends. So I always tell the kids, like, the playing thing is the biggest thing. Like, it's cool to go, Britt Burns at USC right now, and he's got probably 6 or 7 pairs of free shoes, free swag, traveling on some of the road games. And yet I look at Luke and AJ and they're playing 40 minutes a game, and Britt hasn't played in a game, so it's one of those, I always tell the kids, like, go where you're going to play. because of the shine and the luster of being on a D1 team, or, whatever that is, whatever that level is. At the end of the day, you just want to hoop. And so, I always tell the kids, like, go where you're going to play. And that's what I would have done if I had a time machine and could go back. So playing to me is more important than where you end up. So it's got to be a good fit.
Coach Harris, how was that conversation that you had to have with your sons when it came to, all right, go to this school because you're going to be able to get more playing time instead of going to a bigger school?
I think I played at Hamilton in D3. And so they knew that, like, I was a big fan of that. And, one of my good friends is the head coach at Stanford, Kyle Smith, and he played with me, at Hamilton. And so I think they had probably a different sort of outlook about D3 and high academic, and they were both really good students. And so it was kind of a natural fit. Like, AJ got a lot of D2s that wanted him to go there, but they weren't nearly as good academically as Emory or Williams, where he was looking. And so, but he did look at them. He definitely wanted to go as high as he could go. And if he got like the right D1 walk-on thing, I think he would have tried it. But Luke was a really, really good student. And so for him, the best possible school was a big priority too. And so he went to Carleton, which was like the 5th best liberal arts school in the country or something. And and it was they really wanted him to. And so that same with Emory, like, one of my big things, like, you should go where you're wanted to, like, where people want, Emory really made a priority of AJ. Like, this is how we see you progressing through the 4 years. And like, this year he's starting on a really good team. And like, they've fulfilled those promises to him, and they're really loyal. Luke, the same thing. Like, the coach is like, you're going to have a really good career here. Like, we don't, it was COVID, and he's like, normal year, we probably don't get you, like, end up in the NESCAC or whatever. But he's like, we really want you here. We're going to give you the ball. You're going to play 4 years, and he's going to retire the 4th leading scorer and probably be in their Hall of Fame. This is his 2nd year leading the conference in scoring and maybe be an MVP. So it's pretty cool. I think he would.
Academic All-American too, right?
Yeah, academic All-American. So he's had this amazing experience. He also has a job, which is nice to get, hard to get these days. So I think academically they're having a great experience as well, which is important to me. So they've found the right fit. And, it seems like Luke Barrett picked the right place. Like, he's flourished and JoJo's flourishing. So I just think every kid has to find the right fit. But it's really like you're entrusting your son to somebody else. Like, and as a coach, I'm sort of like, I talked to all the coaches, and I was really in tune to what they're really saying, because no matter what they say, no one's going to hand you anything. Like, you're gonna get there, and like, there's going to be 5 other guys trying to beat you out. Like, no matter what the coach says, you better play well. Like, no matter who you are, if you show up, like, Luke Barrett was a walk-on, and there's all these guys that he's passed that are gone now or transferred, or that he just outplayed every day, So it's kind of, but I think finding a good fit for who you are, and not so much just like the shiniest thing, like Coach said, or I think a lot of kids make a big mistake, and then they're back, transferring, and especially nowadays, you're in the portal, or you're always looking for the next thing. It's kind of nice to find a home and be with your friends. Like, AJ and Luke's teammates are their best friends too, which is the way I had it. Like, all my best friends are from college basketball, so those are all my favorite memories, is just being on the team. And I don't know, Ben was saying like playing, and it definitely is playing memories, but a lot of it is like the stuff on the bus or in the locker room, or like, I think playing college sports is just a great experience in general. I think it's good for your life, keeping you focused on academics. And I think athletes actually do pretty well academically because they're organized, and they know how to budget time. And, I see a lot of kids, my friends' sons and daughters who go to college and don't have that, and they sort of have a hard time getting the structure in to get your work done, or, I think athletes have a little leg up that way.
Coach Worley, I'm gonna give this question to you after that was said, because when I look at Luke Barrett play on television, he might not be scoring. I mean, he's getting rebounds, he's getting assists, but it's kind of like, I guess you would say, for a more noticeable player out there, like Draymond Green, it's the energy. I see Luke Barrett play with a lot of energy out there. It's just like, it seems as if it's like, hey, look, this is someone who has truly earned his position on the court. Did you see that when he was going to Piedmont High School, that same type of energy, that same type of hustle?
I think
I'm calling him out right now asking that question.
I mean, Ben talks about this all the time. I mean,
I'm happy to jump in, but yeah, go
yeah,
for it.
yeah. I mean, for the 1 year I was with Barrett, I mean, he was up and down. You know what I'm saying? But at times he would show it and be like, okay, he can do that, but can we get it on a trajectory where it's
Consistent
all the
basis.
time?
Yeah.
It was always a roller coaster. That's what I saw with Barrett. But yeah, seeing him now, and he's a smart player. He does his job, and that's all you can ask for a college player. But Ben can say more about this than because he coached him more than I have. So
Jason, you can jump in on this one too, but yeah, he was always usually one of the best players that stepped out on the court. So when you're really talented, sometimes the work ethic comes later, right? It's not until you go against other kids who are just as good or more talented than you, where it's like, okay, how do I separate myself from them? And it's that work ethic piece. So he always worked hard. He was always a really smart basketball player. He'd make moves in practices, and you're like, that's a D1 type move, right? That a lot of coaches will talk about. So he had the skill and talent, but there was definitely a level of like, when do I turn it on? Right. And so you'd see flashes of it and whatnot. Our biggest rival for us in league is Bishop O'Dowd. And so there's an awesome story I have where, we were playing Bishop O'Dowd. JoJo was a sophomore, I think, on that team too. And it was a close game back and forth. It was by far the most talented team we've ever had in Piedmont, 9 seniors, JoJo, Luke Harris, and Luke Barrett, like 3 hoopers on a team. You don't usually get that, especially in Piedmont. And we're playing O'Dowd. And I think Barrett picked up his 3rd or 4th foul, maybe. We were down like 12 or 13, I think it was. So I took Barrett out because we needed him 4th quarter or whatever. And the guys who went in, the reserves went in and started making a comeback. So, we're down 11. Now we're down 8. We get a stop. We're down 6. Luke gets an and 1. We're down 5. And so now there's like 3 minutes left in the 4th quarter, and we've cut into the lead, and we're playing really well. And I turned to Barrett. I'm like, okay, you got 4 fouls, final 3 minutes. Like, we need you. And he turned to Harris and he goes, Coach, like, I don't know I don't know if you want to put me back in. Maybe just keep this team out there because they're playing so well.
Wow.
And it was one of those things. I'm like, Barrett, and I looked at Jason. Jason looked at me like, you better put his ass in the freaking game. I was like, Barrett, get in there.
I told him, well, you're going in. So
yeah. So we threw him in there. It was a epic game. Like JoJo hits corner 3. We ended up losing in double overtime to a pretty amazing Bishop O'Dowd team. But it was one of those things. And Barrett came back actually last year to our game against Sam Leandro, and we were just talking, shopping it up about how many minutes he's going to play and sort of his role on the St. Mary's team and where that came from, and telling him how he's just a different person and player than when we had him in high school. And he's like, explain. And I think he had forgotten about the O'Dowd story because I told him that story after our game against San Leandro, and he like gave me a hug and was like, Coach, I'm so embarrassed because that is not who I am now. So to like see that, so to the person and player he is now, I can't take full credit for that, obviously. As a high school coach, right, it's only one stepping stone along the way. And so, I like to think that like we pushed him in the right direction, but we can't take full credit for him. At the end of the day, it's what the players want to do and what they want to do. But
I will say I would say that the thing that he was best at, better than my kids, better than JoJo, is that he was the most humble player who was a good ever had, and like he really. Yeah. He let JoJo score more points than him if we won. He let Luke score more points than him if we won. He didn't care any points he averaged. And like I'm telling you, my sons know how many points they have always at all times. JoJo always knows how many points he has. Like Barrett was really not like that. Like I think he averaged 16 or 17 a game as a senior, and he didn't care. We're winning. He liked being part of the team, and he's humble and a great teammate. Like he was beloved by teammates. Like and he never had one teammate who didn't love Barrett. And I think it's that way at St. Mary's. But I think his role at St. Mary's is what he likes. Like I don't think he wanted to be like, I got the ball the whole game, or I shoot every time, and I think like JoJo and my kids like kind of wanted to be that guy a little bit. Like I like having the ball in my hands. Like they like taking the big shot. Like I think he likes being part of the ensemble, and like I think he's perfect for what he found the perfect role, and he's doing it at an incredibly high level, which is awesome. But I felt like that was always his personality. He was like someone that was just really humble and unselfish, Yeah.
So I only got to see one of these games. It seems like Bishop O'Dowd is always a thorn in your side. I was there for one of those games where it might have gone overtime or could have gone double overtime as well. It was Joe
Probably.
Murphy and it was AJ Harris there. I think AJ Harris fouled out of that game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Bad,
gosh, you
bad call record.
Yeah.
Shitty charge call.
See,
Terrible.
you remember these moments.
Oh,
Huh?
it's bad with Bishop O'Dowd. Like this is year 6, so God, I hate to say it on a podcast recording, but I think we're 0-11 against Bishop O'Dowd, and of those 11 losses, I think we've got 4 in overtime, 3 in double overtime, and like 5 or 6 that are 3 or 4 points or less. I think there was only 2 games in our 11 times going against them that have like not really been games, maybe 3. So every game with them, even though they're more athletic, usually bigger, deeper than we are, we always play them pretty well. But yeah, it's they're definitely a thorn in our side for sure.
More like a gorilla on our back than a monkey.
But they have the advantage of being able to pull for more players, right? And that's why I did want to ask you, like, was building this program that you guys have right now, was it, just a success overnight, or did it take some time?
You want me to jump in on that one first?
Sure.
Yeah. I think we had success our first year. We won NCS for the first time, our first year as a staff. Obviously, anywhere you go, I don't care what program you go into, like you have to have talent to win. And that was, I think, the most talented team we have. Like I said, JoJo was on that team. Luke Harris was on that team. We had Deron Benson on that team. Luke Barrett. So we had the deepest team talent wise. So that obviously helps a lot. And we knew that we were going to be really good. I think the year before they'd come off of like a 21-11 season and made quarterfinals of state. Year before that, I think they were like 19-11. So I would say the program itself was in pretty good shape before we got there. It wasn't one that was a complete mess like some of the Bay Area high schools are. Coach Labdiotis, who I think was there for 13 years, Harris, 15 years.
Yeah.
Like he was an awesome coach, and he set a standard that the program that I sort of inherited after Mike Hudson was there for 2 years. But like I think Coach Labdiotis, who's now at San Marin, set the program up to be in pretty good shape, right? Very organized, great coach, was successful in creating these sort of structures and foundations that were there. So then when Mike Hudson came in, he sort of built a little bit on that foundation. And so the pieces were already there, it feels like. And so we just put our sort of own stamp onto it, it feels like, in terms of how we were going to play style. Culture changes, I think, was huge for us, a very different culture that we brought in. But for the most part, I think the program was already in pretty good shape. And so I feel like the first year we stepped into a pretty good situation, which isn't like most programs, I think. So yeah, there was success overnight, but again, can't take full credit for it, obviously. It was my first year as varsity head coach. And so, it was pretty awesome to see how successful we were. And looking back, it was like, how did we do what we did with, sort of the inexperience that I had as a varsity head coach. But yeah, it was a fun year, and very, very memorable. But yeah, I think the success came overnight, but obviously a lot of hard work put in before.
Coach Harris, what were some of those cultural changes that you noticed?
I think Ben's built a great culture of he's just extremely competitive, and he does not accept us being mediocre, and sort of set that standard like we're always going to be good. So we're not going to make excuses. We're not going to say that they're bigger, faster. Like we're going to figure out a way to win, And I think the kids have helped set the culture. Like one thing, like the kids that do it now don't even know why they're doing it. But AJ decided his senior year that we were going to go Friday, or junior year that we're going to go Friday mornings at 6 a.m. all preseason. So 6 to 7 a.m. He's like, I want to work out Friday mornings at 6 to 7 a.m. And he got JoJo on board. And then so when those two were doing it, everyone did it. And then the next year he was a senior and everyone did it. And now just everyone does it. So no one even knows why they do it anymore. It's just like Friday 6 a.m. workout. And everyone, like we have freshmen getting up at 6 a.m. on Fridays to work out in the fall. And they don't know why they're doing it either. It's sort of like he also used to go to the Oakland Y every day. And now we have 10 kids that are Oakland Y member. Like these things just keep building on themselves, where the kids that come up through the program see what the older guys are doing and they just start doing it. And so that's kind of how, and I think Ben's first year, he also set the tone for like, I'm going to play the guys that earn it and not necessarily, he was under a lot of pressure to play certain people or these people or, and he withstood a lot of sort of challenges to who he was playing. And I think that set the tone that like, you're going to have to earn your time and everything else. So I think the culture is really a big part of why we do well year after year.
With your junior varsity and your freshman athletes, is your purpose with them to prepare them to play varsity basketball?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm doing the freshman this year, and last year I did it. I've done JV in the past, but that's my number one. We have a couple kids on freshmen this year. Like, I sort of view, wins and losses on freshmen. We try to do our best. I think we're like 12-10 or something, which is fine. But there's like 2 or 3 guys like, well, if we could get them to varsity next year or get them. So we really try to develop them. And it's nice. Like a lot of schools our size don't have 3 teams. And so it's nice. JV, James does a great job, and he's got, some guys he's getting ready for next year. So we really need JV and freshman players to be good. Not like, we need them to come and play next year, right? We need guys to come up and be ready to play. Because we're not getting recruits and we're not getting, a new class every year. So we have to work with what we got. It's important that we develop them well.
I have a couple more questions for you guys. This one, I'm really interested in hearing. I'm going to give you guys all a scenario. I'm going to start with you, Coach Worley. We're dealing with boys here, but I figure you probably know something about this one, right? So here's your scenario. One of your players is having girl trouble. And, a girl they like, isn't giving them the time of day, and it's become, distracting. It's a disruption during practice and it's during games. How do you help that boy out?
I'll keep it PG for you. But hell, when I was a sophomore in high school, I dropped my girlfriend for hoops. When hoop season came around, I mean, she was not pleased. She was not pleased. I will tell you that. But I did, when football season was over and hoops came up, I literally dropped her for hoops, man. And she was pissed, but I just love hoops so much, man. Like the girl distraction didn't faze me. So as far as, a couple kids come to me every once in a while. I just tell them to stay focused, man, on the task at hand. And, life be life in any way. So, you might get another girl that like you the next week. It's high school, man. You can't dwell on one girl or anything like that. That's usually what I tell them and tell them to focus.
Ben had a couple guys the last couple of years that had some stuff going on, right? I won't name names. But.
Yeah, there were a couple. Yeah, it's similar to Coach Smart, right? Try to give him as a coach, right? I'm here for you. Whatever you need, let me know. But, my message, like coach, is sort of similar of like, the loyalist girlfriend you can have is hoops. The loyalist partner you can have is hoops. You put 100% into playing basketball, it's going to give you 100% back, right? It's one of those things where whatever work you put in playing, I don't know, it's a nice distraction too, right? Like from that stuff. I never found myself, even when I played, that hoops was, or relationship things were tough. It was a nice way to escape sort of stuff was the playing side of it. But yeah, we definitely have to be aware of our high school athletes when things are coming up, because I know it's a lot harder. I don't want to say it's hard. It's a lot more. It's different now with the social media and things like that. I know there's a lot of things that can get out there publicly that these kids have in terms of pressure and anxiety. So, as a teacher and as a coach, my first thing is always, the individual themselves and how can I help? What can I do? Right. And a lot of times the kids will tell you directly what they want. If you've established that relationship and built that trust, you can have those difficult conversations, which will allow them to get back to the court and more focused. Right. So that's kind of how I've dealt with it the last couple of years, is just trying to figure out what they need as an individual.
But it's an important question, because I can see myself as a player out there I'm having girl trouble. This girl broke up with me or she's ignoring me, whatnot. But then I got to go to this game and I see her out there in the stands and maybe she's, talking and, laughing with some other guy. Like, I could just feel like that's going to throw my shot off. I mean, is it important for me to come to you right there and say, Coach, there she is right there. This is tough. Like, how do you help that? That's a crisis situation for a teenager. How do you help that guy?
First of all, we'd be fired up if we had that many fans. So
yeah, seriously. Seriously.
Like, we can work with a good crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, this group, you don't know what's going on with this group. This group we got now they're pretty much mute, man. So we don't know who has a girl, who doesn't. So this group is hard to tell.
They're a quiet bunch for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank God.
Yeah, my first thought was like, go out and score 50 tonight and see what happens tomorrow for the stands, right? Like,
you score 25 and there'll be
maybe yeah. They're back in your car tomorrow or whatever.
She made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
So. Coach Spencer, here's your scenario. One of your players wants to get more involved with the game plan. They want to get more shot opportunities. They want to get more playing time. However, they're not great offensively. They're a decent defender, but they're not one of your starters. What do you tell that player to either, help him reach his goal or just to accept his role on the team?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, for me, because we have a lot of kiddos that come through and a lot of players that come through, right, that, aren't great at everything or whatnot, right? And so, I mean, I think with Coach Harris and Coach Shamari, what we try to do is we try to find what they are, the one thing that they're actually plus in, and then have that become what they do really well, right? So there's a couple guys I can think of in the last few years where it's like they couldn't really shoot, but you know what? We're going to turn this dude into a defender because he's strong and quick and he's got a football body. Like, he's just going to become our number one lockdown guard defender, for whoever we're playing. So if we're playing Branson or whoever it is, you're going to guard their stud and you're not letting them touch the ball. So we try to find, I think, me anyways, and with the staff, I think we try to find what is something that these guys do really well and try to like enhance that. And I think having just an open dialogue with them. For me personally, I have a hard time saying like, hey, yeah, I'm going to get you more minutes. And then next game, give them more minutes. For me, my conversation with the athletes is always like, you got to earn that. And unfortunately, you're not going to earn it in a game. A lot of what I do, and I think maybe even Coach Shamari and Coach Harris to a certain extent might not agree with me, but like I got to see it consistently in practice before I am comfortable in a game. So my thing, in telling a guy how he wants to get more minutes is like, hey, here's the skill that you got to work on because you're already good at it, but let's get better at that. And then you got to show me that in practice before I start putting you in the game, if that makes sense, right? Just because we see the kids, 4 practices a week for a couple hours, but games are only an hour and you get 1-2 a week. So, you're seeing kids 8 hours for practice versus 2 hours for games. So until I can see that in practice, it's hard to trust them in a game. So we sort of find what's a skill they can work on and then try to enhance that. And then like Coach Harris was talking about earlier, the culture that we've sort of created and the kids have created is, I think guys are more comfortable with what their roles are. And again, not being necessarily the deepest, most athletic team, guys have seen over the last few years, like, oh yeah, so-and-so couldn't shoot, but man, they played 30 minutes a game. Well, it's because they defended. Oh, that guy played, he didn't really score, but man, he got every single rebound. So I think the kids have seen that you can get on the floor and stay if you're doing something while you're out there, regardless if it's rebounding, scoring, taking charges, blocking shots, getting steals, just being active on defense. And so I think it kind of polices itself in some ways, right? So we don't have to necessarily have those conversations of like, this is what you need to do to get on the court. It's more of like, here's something to work on, and then we sort of see it, and then they sort of start to buy in, and they kind of accept their roles, if you will, just from being in our gym and around our staff.
Coach Worley, have you ever had to check any of those attitudes and some of these problems as well to help out?
Yeah, probably they'd be more probably in my ear than Harris and Ben, because I probably see them more than these two do because I work at the high school or whatnot, and they're always in my ear like, Coach, how can I get some more minutes? Da-da-da-da. I'm like, man, you just need to work on your game, man, and be consistent. Like Coach said, like you gotta earn Coach's trust, man, and he'll put you out there. If you don't do that, then I don't know what to tell you. So I usually be that blunt with them because it's usually that simple.
But
So
like, are there things that you see where it's like, well, I don't see you competing in practice, and is it
yeah,
important to compete in
I
practice?
remind players all the time when we're in practices and stuff. I remind players all the time, like, man, you're not going hard enough right now. You BSing right now. Like, come on, man, you're not going game speed. That's why coach ain't playing you. Like, hear what we're telling you and just do what we're telling you to get on the floor. So I'm in kids' ears all the time. I'm in their ear all the time.
I think too, like I have this with freshmen too. I think kids often don't understand what playing well is. Like they think if you play 2 minutes and score one basket, you played well or something. And like I tell freshmen, like if you go in the game, your man doesn't score, you don't turn the ball over, and you run the offense, like now you've earned more minutes. Like if you can go in, not turn the ball over, and play good defense, now I can play you 3 minutes because you haven't hurt us, even if you didn't score. Yeah, if you're rebounding and you're not turning the ball over and you're playing good defense, like we can play you more. Like you don't, we got guys that can score, right? Usually, like you kind of know if you're that guy or not. So like everyone wants to go in and take shots, and I'm like, why don't you go in and get rebounds? Like that coach always plays the leading rebounder. I told AJ that last year because he wasn't starting. I'm like, go get every rebound, man. They play the guy that gets every rebound every time. Every coach in the world. Like I know a lot of coaches. They all want to win, and if you're rebounding and playing defense, you're going to win. So like that guy always plays.
Yeah. And I think it's tough too nowadays with these kiddos and the way they use social media and everything you see is the offensive side of the ball, right? They go on, X or Twitter or Instagram, and it's always the dunk or the three or the through the legs move. They don't show clips of, Dennis Rodman going and getting 15 rebounds and block shots, and they don't show some of the intangibles, right? Like when you turn on SportsCenter, you see the ticker at the bottom, it's who scored the most points, right? They're never going to show you the guy who, 2 points but had 21 rebounds, right? Like it's just not what they see. So they grow up, I think, seeing like that's how they get into games is just by scoring. And so obviously we as a program, I think, and as a staff try to, we don't have the ability with our depth to not play the kids who are, just going to go out and contribute some way to make us competitive. So, we find that every year we don't have a kid who's great on the offensive side of the ball, but they're our best defenders, so they're going to play a ton, right? So yeah, we definitely want to try to make sure that the kids understand their roles. But yeah, I know Coach Shamari and Coach Harris. Like Coach Harris's nickname is the shot doctor, so he works a lot with like a lot of guys on their shot and getting shots up and things like that. And Coach Shamari, and I know so for a lot of the kids. Who are interested in more minutes. Sometimes, again, like you said, they're more comfortable going to those two. I think they're more good cops, and I'm the bad cop at times, right? Like they can say that's one of the perks about being an assistant coach, right? Like you can play those roles where I feel like sometimes I have to be a little bit more direct and harsh and can't always.
For example, like we won a game by 1 the other night, and we had 3 starters injured, a 4th one fouled out. So we were down to we're playing guys that never play or very rarely play, and we're up 3 with 4 seconds left, and a kid that from the end of the bench makes a deflection, like gets his hand on the inbounds pass,
wins the game,
which wins the game because the clock starts running, and by the time they lay it in, the game's over. Like that one little play won the game. That he was alert and deflected a ball. Like he didn't dunk it. Like he just made one alert defensive play, and we won a game. It's like, and he was ready. Like I thought that was like a great coaching moment. Like man, this kid hasn't played all season. He comes to practice every night. He has injuries, and when you put him in with 5 seconds left, he finds a way to make one great play. And then never going to show up in the box score, and no one's going to notice. Like, but it was kind of a great coaching thing. Like, wow, that was great that you and we shouted him out. Like we didn't even talk about like Ravi made the game winner, and we kind of were talking about the deflection the whole time, which is great. Like because like Ravi's supposed to do that. He's like the best player or one of the best players.
You never know when your number's going to be called for the most part.
Yeah.
Here's a scenario question for you, Coach Harris. I feel like this might have happened too, or similarly, it might have kind of happened. But let's say Coach Spencer got COVID, or comes down with some illness, and he can't make tonight's game, which is in 2 hours. Then you got Coach Worley. his car broken into because we got to get him out of Oakland, man. Like it ain't right in Oakland. But those crackheads go crazy out there. He's not going to be able to make. Right? He's not going to be able to make tonight's game either. Coach Harris, how do you handle this emergency situation so that the team doesn't suffer and you guys don't skip a beat in tonight's game?
I think like all three of us are very much on the same page, and we talk a ton. So I mean, we've all I think one year when Ben's son got sick, Shamari and I took over and coached like 10. I don't remember how many games.
12 games.
Shamari's, I think we did get COVID, I was gone and Ben got COVID. Shamari coached the first game of the season.
Yeah, Marin Catholic last year was Shamari.
So I think we all are on the same page with we all run the same stuff. We would know who to play. I don't think we would. I mean, maybe the style would be different or whatever, but I think the basic. I think we'd all know what the other ones would do in a game. Like what our strategy would be. We usually all look at the film, and Coach Kalen too. Like we have 4 guys looking at film and talking on text about what we should do and strategy, and so we're usually pretty good about being consistent on how we play and what we're trying to do, and so I think we do a good job of keeping it fairly simple. We try to run 3, 4, 5 things really well and not a million things. And so I don't know. I don't think there'd be that big a difference, to be honest. I think kids would feel like it was what we always do.
Yeah.
Coach Harris, where do you see your coaching journey go from here?
Oh, I like what I'm doing. There was times I thought, well, I'd be a varsity head coach, and then I'm like, it's a tough job. Ben can tell you, but being an assistant is nice. It's a good, and I get to go, like I can take off, go see AJ play, or so I like what I'm doing now, and this is a good fit for me. So, and it fits what's kind of being right down the street and everything is great convenience wise too.
Step in there, Coach Worley. What's the next step for you in your coaching career?
I'm good where I'm at right now. If any situations came up to where it fits for me, then I'll check it out. But right now it's just, helping the kids out at Piedmont, trying to enhance their skills, whether that be a personal trainer or whatever. And just, just keep learning from these 2 guys, keep taking notes. So, yeah.
Coach Spencer, we've kind of covered this throughout the entire interview, but I want to know for you, how important has, your coaching staff for you been over the years, and, could you have built this program, to the heights that it's reached so far?
Yeah, I mean, these two are family members. I got married 7 years ago and had groomsmen there, and not these two, but if we were to get married again and have a wedding, they would definitely be the first 2 there. They're family. A few years ago, we went through a pretty traumatic experience, my wife and I and our son. So they stepped in, and the first thing, text, call, whatever it was, wasn't about basketball. It was just, how are you as a person? How are you holding up? And so, those are the kind of things that you get out of coaching, right? And so, yeah, they're incredible coaches, and I can't imagine coaching without them. You're right. I trust them so much on just aspects of basketball, but just life. I think once basketball season around, I'm not gonna lie, my wife gets, I think, pretty jealous. There's definitely times where I'm pretty competitive, and we'll lose a game, or someone will be hurt or whatever, and we're trying to get ready for the next one. I think they can test this. I'll send a text message at 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning when I'm like rolling over and can't sleep or whatever, and my wife's like, "Who are you texting at 3 in the morning?" type deal, right? I'm like, "Jill, like, don't worry. It's not, it's Jason and Shamar. I promise. Look, and so, I know she was like, "What the hell? Who are you texting at 3 a.m.?" I'm like, "We got a game against Dad tomorrow. I gotta run this by Jason and Shamar."
I've gotten that one too. Who are you texting?
Yeah. I've definitely had Ann actually approach me. So Jason's wife, Ann, has been like, "You text Jason at all hours of the night." I'm like, "Sorry, I got a 3-year-old, so I can use that kind of as an excuse." But yeah, no, I couldn't have done what I've done, and we couldn't have done what we've done without these two. Like there's definitely been times where, they've stepped up. They coach the JV and freshman team, which are the guys that we need. They deal with the parents. They run meetings. So aside from the being mentors on the court and just teaching the X's and O's, they're doing all the bureaucratic stuff behind the scenes, doing paperwork, right? Like, meeting with parents, end of the season parties. Like Coach Harris always says that like high school coaching is probably the hardest thing because it's a thankless job, right? And then being an assistant is even more thankless, right? It's tough, but those are the key pieces. Like if you go around to every Bay Area team, like talent comes and goes, but what makes a team good is the coaching staff. I think the only reason we're as good as we've been is because I have someone like Jason, someone like Shamari, and someone like Coach Kalen and Coach James, just all the way down the line. They're all guys who love it and know a lot about it, right? Like I'm not an expert by any means. I think even just the other night I was going to have a strategy against one of the teams we're playing, and Jason texted me something, and I was like, that's what we're going with. Like there's a trust there too, right? Like they're pretty direct and honest with me when I'm thinking of what we're going to do or how we're going to play it, and there's no egos, I guess, right? Like I don't get offended or feel self-conscious when Shamar is like, hey, maybe we should play this guy because that guy's not playing, and I know you want to play him, but try this guy out. So yeah, we're as good as we are just because I have such a good dedicated staff behind me, and they work just as hard as, if not harder. I think Jason, right now, you're doing your freshman practice for 2 hours, and then he stays for varsity. So like I'm only going for my 2 hour practice and whatnot, and Jason's there for 4 hours. And so so you got to have guys that want it, and again, you don't get paid for it very well, and so you got to really love it and enjoy
it. Does Piedmont get back to league championship this year?
League championship?
That's a tall hill to climb.
That's a tall stretch.
NCS. We're targeting NCS.
NCS, and then the state run if we can get the right place. But yeah, I think league's tough this year. So maybe next year. Next year will probably be the one. Hopefully.
I'm wishing you guys the best of luck. Final question for all three of you: Super Bowl's next week. Who you guys got, Chiefs or the Eagles?
I got KC, man.
I know you go. I mean, like Patrick Mahomes, 15.
Michael Jordan of football,
right?
Man. Michael Jordan of football, 3-peat. I'm sorry, it's happening. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
I can't disagree with that. I was rooting for the Bills really hard. I have a good friend from Buffalo. I feel bad for the Bills. I want the Bills to win, but I don't see the Eagles beating them. I don't see it.
I'm gonna go with the Eagles are gonna win. Saquon's gonna go nuts just to stick it to the Giants. It's huge, but I have a feeling, a little conspiracy theory out here on the web. Taylor Swift is dating Travis Kelce. They're totally gonna make the Chiefs win with the refs, just so they can get more young fans in the stands. So I think the Chiefs are gonna win, but I hope the Eagles win.
Yeah, me too.
Well, hey, I'm grateful that you guys have, come together and grown this friendship. I'm grateful that we were able to do this. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. That was fun.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.
All right,
thanks, guys.
This has been the educational experience.